My name's Keith Hamer. This is my lightweight Rochdale Olympic Phase 1. The lightweight cars were built by the factory in very small numbers. As far as we know, there were 4 of them, 4 Phase 1s, and this is the only one remaining. The other 3 have been destroyed in racing incidents. The car's a 1962, was built by the factory for John Anstice Brown, who raced it in period between 1962 and the mid to late 1960s. It's basically a standard car, apart from the fact that they used a lot less fiberglass, which is what makes it the lightweight. It's also ran in period a Ford 1 litre Screamer, a pre-crossflow Ford Cosworth Blackhead. That engine unfortunately has long since gone. It's currently running a 1500 pre-crossflow, which is mildly tuned. After it had finished racing, or after John finished racing with it, he sold it to one of his friends, who subsequently registered the car for the road. The car was registered in 1968, which is why there's a disparity between the registration and the date the car was first built. It then went through a number of different hands, at one point going back to John for a short period. I stumbled across the car when a friend of mine bought it in about 1979, and Derek, the friend, and myself restored it to show condition in 79. When Derek sold the car, unfortunately I was unable to afford to buy it, although I did really want to. So it left Derek and went to a gentleman in North Wales. From there it passed through again a number of hands until about 1995. I was with a friend of mine who pointed out an advert in Autosport for a car which sounded decidedly like the lightweight. When I rang up about the car, it turned out that the owner was out, but his mother said we could come down to see it. We went down to see it the following day, and sure enough it was the lightweight, and I bought it back. Since then it's been fully restored to as close to its original specification as we could possibly get to. The only real addition is the addition of a full roll cage, basically on safety grounds.
And what are the plans for the car now?
We are going to be racing with the Classic Sports Car Club in their Swinging 60s series. The engine currently in the car is a 1500 pre-crossflow, but we are going to be building over the winter a full race 1700 pre-crossflow. Effectively the same as the engine that was in it originally, but with a bigger capacity. The prototype Olympic was first built in 1959. The production cars went into production in about 1960, mid to late 1960. With the exception of the Lotus Elite, this is one of the first GRP monocoques ever made. The The concept of the Olympic was effectively very similar to what Lotus and TBR were doing in the period, which was to avoid the then purchase tax, which was quite onerous. They were supplied as a complete kit of parts, which was absolutely everything you needed. The basis for the phase 1 is effectively Riley 1.5 or Morris 1000. The phase 2s were done in exactly the same manner. The component parts for those being Triumph front suspension with a Ford engine. Although later on the phase 2 was available with the Riley or the Morris 1000 engine as an option. There were a number of companies that Rochdale Motor Panels used which would take their parts and build the car for the customer, and in fact Rochdale Motor Panels did do a few as turnkey cars. During its production there were approximately 250 phase 1s produced. There was a big overlap between the phase 1 and the phase 2. Effectively the phase 1 remained in production even when the phase 2s were being made, and the factory realistically retired the phase 1 moulds in about 1967. There were approximately 150 phase 2s produced. The production of Rochdale Olympics in general kind of died down towards the end of the 1960s. The final phase 2 to be produced was around the end of 1972. Under the skin there are fairly major differences between the phase 1 and the phase 2. To the average passerby, the simplest way of saying whether it's a phase 1 or a phase 2 is that the phase 2 had a lifting hatchback, very similar to the Jaguar E-Type. I think that's the biggest thing that most people are surprised at, the fact that it's all but 60 years old. The beauty of GRP over steel is that we don't suffer from the rust problem. There aren't any real problems with it. The only problems would occur if the thing was involved in an accident, which can be repaired very simply by effectively reproducing what the original manufacturers did, which is replacing the damaged parts.